He didn't just betray the woman who saved him, he broke her in ways the world would never forget. After she worked 5 jobs to pay his debts, to feed him, to keep the lights on, while he gambled away their future, he repaid her with bruises, mockery, and betrayal. He dragged her across the living room floor the night she begged him to stop borrowing from loan sharks. He beat her until her lip split, then poured boiling water on her arm for daring to question him. And when she could no longer lift her own bag to work, he stood over her with a cold smile and said, "Sign the divorce papers, Ilara. You're a burden. Chloe and I deserve better." Yes, Chloe, her best friend. The same woman who once held her hand through night shifts and called her sister. Together, they humiliated her in public, calling her the maid who thought she was a wife. They took everything: her home, her dignity, her marriage, leaving her with nothing but scars and silence. But what Marcus never knew, what no one could have imagined, was that the poor woman he threw away carried a secret far greater than their cruelty, a dormant inheritance of $50 billion from a family legacy she never claimed. The woman he beat and discarded would rise not with revenge, but with power. Not with screams, but with silence that would echo across boardrooms and headlines. For sometimes, the one you burn to ashes becomes the fire that lights the world. This is not just a story of betrayal. It is the resurrection of a woman they called worthless, and the reminder that dignity cannot be destroyed, only buried until it learns to rise. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting her voice drown again under his laughter. But when you subscribe, you stand beside every woman who worked, bled, and rose again after cruelty. Click that button and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Let Ilara, I know she's not alone anymore. The scream came before the crashed glass shattering against the kitchen wall, shards glittering like tears. 5 jobs and you still can't make this place livable? Marcus shouted, veins rising in his neck. You call this marriage? Ilara stood frozen beside the sink, her apron still damp from her night shift. The smell of detergent clung to her hands. Her wrists trembled, but her voice stayed steady. I'm trying, Marcus. I'm doing everything I can. Ilara Hale, 32, a woman with soft eyes hardened by survival. She worked herself to exhaustion 5 jobs. Cleaning offices at dawn, waitressing till midnight, delivering parcels on weekends, tutoring neighborhood kids, and folding clothes at the laundromat between shifts. Every dollar she earned vanished into Marcus's gambling tabs and late bills. Marcus, 35, tall, sharp-featured, wearing the arrogance of a man who once tasted success and couldn't let go of it. His pride was all he had left, and even that was rotting. He paced, slamming a drawer. My friends' wives don't smell like bleach. They don't come home in cheap uniforms. You've turned this house into a morgue. Her eyes watered. If I didn't, we'd be on the street. I paid your last debt to King's Club. You promised no more betting. He sneered. Promises don't feed me, Ilara. Her mind drifted to the hospital room where Marcus lay pale after collapsing from stress. She'd sold her late father's watch, the only thing she had left to pay for his treatment. He had clutched her hand then, whispering, You're my miracle, Ilara. I'll spend the rest of my life repaying you. Now, he hurled that same devotion against her. You're dragging me down. You think working yourself to death makes you a saint? It makes you pathetic. The words struck harder than the glass. Ilara lowered her gaze. Her palms were rough from mopping floors, her back sore from lifting boxes. Yet even now, her first thought was fear not for herself, but for how broken he'd become. Marcus, she whispered, what happened to the man who used to dream with me? He laughed coldly. He woke up. Silence. Then the doorbell rang. Mrs. Langford peeked in, holding an envelope. Rent's 3 weeks late, dear. I need payment tomorrow or... Her eyes darted to Marcus's glare and she quickly retreated. Ilara sank onto a chair, her pulse heavy. She mentally tallied her next shift schedule. Dawn cleaning from 5 to 7, tutoring from 8 to 10, courier drop-offs till 2, laundromat until 6, diner till midnight. Her entire existence was measured in clock-ins. Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. She caught the name flashing on the screen. C. He snatched it away, face tightening. Who's C? She asked softly. He smiled faintly. Someone who still treats me like a man. The room spun. The kettle whistled behind them, releasing a hiss like boiling anger. He brushed past her shoulder, the contact sharp, intentional. "Clean this mess," he said, stepping out. "You're good at cleaning, aren't you?" Her mind flashed to the night he had lost everything at the casino. She had held his shaking body, whispering, "We'll fix it. I'll take another job." He'd wept then, promising, "You'll never regret loving me." Now only cruelty remained where love had once lived. Alara pressed her palm over her mouth, holding back a sob. The phone still vibrated on the counter, and curiosity battled terror. She reached for it, then froze, as the lock screen lit again. "Hotel Silver Bay Suite 312 confirmed for tomorrow." The phone slipped from her fingers and thudded to the floor. Her breath caught. Tomorrow! The same day she'd planned to surprise him with news, the small promotion her diner boss had promised after 3 years of loyalty. But now, a different surprise awaited her. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, echoing through the cracked window. She didn't know it yet, but the next call would change everything. The scent of perfume wasn't hers. It clung to Marcus's jacket like betrayal with a name. Alara stood frozen in the doorway of their cramped apartment, holding the jacket in both hands, her pulse pounding. The air still held the echo of his slammed door. Marcus had stormed out after another argument, muttering something about business meetings and respect. But this was no meeting. Alara, eyes rimmed red from sleeplessness, looked smaller in the dim light of morning. She had just finished her 5th shift of the week, her diner shoes squeaking from grease and fatigue. Marcus had left early, freshly shaved, in the suit she had ironed at dawn. She inhaled again. The perfume rose, and citrus was Chloe's favorite. She dropped the jacket onto the couch, something stiff landing with a dull thud. A hotel keycard. Silver Bay Hotel, Suite 312. Her breath hitched. Her mind reeled back to the previous night, how Chloe had stopped by with croissants, pretending concern. "You work too hard, Alara," she'd said softly, brushing a crumb from Alara's arm. "You should let Marcus handle things for once." And Marcus, lounging shirtless on the couch, had smiled at Chloe in a way that made Alara's stomach knot. Now the knots turned to fire. She sank onto the couch, staring at the keycard. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not her. Not them." Her mind dragged her 2 years back to the night Chloe had stayed over after Marcus's collapse. 2 years earlier, Alara had been pacing outside the hospital room, her hands trembling. Chloe had wrapped her in a hug, whispering, "He's lucky to have you. Any other woman would have left." Marcus had woken later, pale and weak, reaching for Alara's hand. "You're my reason," he'd said. Now those words felt like someone else's lie. Alara rose and walked to the small mirror near their door. Her reflection startled her, dark circles, cracked lips, tired shoulders. She whispered to the reflection as if to a stranger, "You worked 5 jobs for him. You cleaned, delivered, scrubbed, taught, and served while he played cards." Her body trembled, not from weakness, but from awakening. The pieces began to connect: the long phone calls, the locked messages, the sudden business trips. And Chloe's recent distance, the way she stopped answering calls after promising to help Alara with her resume. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message. From Chloe. "Don't stress yourself today, honey. Take a nap. Marcus said he'll handle things." Alara's fingers went cold. The words twisted in her chest. Marcus said. Heart racing, she grabbed her bag, slipped the keycard inside, and tied her diner scarf around her wrist like armor. She marched toward the door, but paused. Their wedding photo hung beside it. Marcus, in a tuxedo, her in a thrifted gown. They had looked invincible that day. She remembered the moment after that photo was taken, how he had leaned close, whispering, "If I ever hurt you, may I lose everything I own." The vow now mocked her from behind glass. Tears welled but didn't fall. She straightened the frame gently. "Then let's see if your vow still stands," she murmured. She opened the door, the morning light hitting her face like judgment. Outside, the city buzzed, indifferent to her heartbreak. Alara gripped her bag tighter, whispering to herself, "Suite 312. Her cab pulled away from the curb, the keycard glinting through the zipper gap like a tiny, cruel truth. She didn't know it yet, but what waited behind that hotel door would break more than her heart. The sound of laughter hit her before the sight did. It wasn't the laughter itself, it was the familiarity of it. Chloe's laugh. Ilara froze outside. Sweet 312, her breath clouding the air. She'd thought she would knock, confront him, demand truth. But through the half-closed door came giggles, glasses clinking, and Marcus's unmistakable voice saying, "To new beginnings." Her hand trembled on the handle. She pushed. Ilara Hale stood in that doorway, a woman who'd worked 5 jobs just to keep them afloat. Every ounce of fatigue, every sleepless night, every burn on her hands, all of it now mocked her through the scent of champagne and betrayal. Marcus, in a white robe, grinned lazily from the bed. Chloe reclined beside him, draped in sheets like a crown of deceit. The room went silent. Marcus's smirk faltered only for a second. "Ilara?" he said, half amused. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice cracked. "Then where should I be, Marcus? At the diner? The laundry? The jobs that paid for your gambling?" Chloe sat up, eyes wide, feigning innocence. "Ilara, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Chloe?" Ilara's voice quivered, but it didn't break. "Because from here, it looks like my best friend is in bed with my husband." Marcus laughed, low and cruel. "Don't make a scene. You always loved drama." He poured himself another drink. "You knew it was over long ago. I just didn't say it out loud." Ilara's knees weakened. The world tilted. 3 years earlier, Marcus had been broke but hopeful, sketching plans for a cafe. Ilara had kissed his forehead, whispering, "We'll make it together." She'd used her savings to fund his dream. The night before the opening, he'd held her hand beneath the stars, promising, "If I ever forget what you've done for me, may I lose everything." Now, that promise lay in ashes. Her voice came out as a whisper. "You promised, Marcus." He shrugged. "Promises don't pay rent. You're just not the woman I married anymore." Ilara's tears streaked silently down her face. "Because I worked? Because I carried us?" He sneered. "Because you became small. Look at you. You clean floors. You deliver food. You're embarrassing." She flinched. Then, something inside her, something long buried, cracked open. She looked around the room, the spilled champagne, the scattered rose petals, the luxury she'd never had. Her gaze softened, not with pity, but with realization. He'd never loved her effort, only her submission. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I paid every debt you ever made. I sold my father's heirloom for you. I gave you my everything." He smirked, pulling a folded paper from the nightstand. "And now, you'll give me one last thing. Your signature." She took the paper. Divorce papers. Typed, sealed, ready. "You already had them prepared?" "Of course," he said. "Chloe and I are getting married. She's my new beginning. You were my mistake." Her mind dragged her to their wedding day, Ilara in a second-hand gown. Marcus's hands trembling as he placed a ring on her finger. "Till death do us part," he'd whispered. Now death would have been kinder than this. Ilara's hands shook. "You used me." Marcus leaned in, voice icy. "I tolerated you." She slapped him, not out of rage but heartbreak. The sound echoed through the suite. Marcus stepped back, touching his cheek, smiling cruelly. "That'll cost you." He snapped his fingers. Mr. Kent entered from the balcony, holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Hale," Kent said smoothly, "if you sign now, you'll save yourself from legal trouble. The apartment, the car, all in Marcus's name." Ilara couldn't breathe. Betrayal had a taste metallic and final. She dropped the pen. Marcus sighed, pouring more champagne. "Sign or not, Ilara, you're done. Chloe and I are going to Paris next week." Her vision blurred. She remembered a winter morning, Marcus crying after losing his mother. She'd held him all night. He had whispered then, "You're my only family left." Now that man was gone. Ilara turned, gripping the doorframe. "You'll regret this," she said softly. "Not because I'll hurt you, but because someday you'll see who I really was." Marcus chuckled. "A cleaner? A waitress? A nobody?" Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a new email notification. Subject: Confidential Rousseau Global Trust Confirmation. $50 billion asset transfer pending. Her eyes widened. She looked back at him one last time, calm now, almost pitying. He had no idea what he'd just thrown away. And the next email would change everything. The phone slipped from Ilara's trembling hand and clattered onto the marble floor. Her breath hitched as the words burned into her vision. $50 billion asset transfer pending. She stood frozen in the empty hotel corridor, mascara streaked, heartbroken but flickering with something unfamiliar possibility. Elara Hale, betrayed wife turned reluctant heiress, now stood at the crossroads between ruin and revelation. Her clothes still smelled faintly of bleach and diner oil, the uniform of survival. Behind her, the laughter of Marcus and Chloe still echoed in her ears. Ahead, a single email that could rewrite her entire existence. Alara's shaking fingers scrolled down the message. The sender, Harrison and Adkins LLP. Dear Miss Rousseau Hale, we have attempted to contact you regarding the activation of your late great-uncle Alistair Rousseau's trust. Please respond immediately to confirm your inheritance. The name Rousseau made her chest tighten. She whispered, It can't be. 20 years earlier, a teenage Elara sat by the window of a modest house, listening to her parents argue quietly. Her father, Thomas Rousseau, once heir to the sprawling Rousseau empire, stood in the doorway with a single suitcase. I'm walking away from it all, he said to Martha. Money builds walls. Love builds homes, Martha had replied. Then promise you'll teach her to Desphanic. Live without bitterness. Thomas smiled at young Elara. One day, if life tests you, remember, dignity is the inheritance no one can steal. Now, those words resurface like sunlight through storm clouds. Dignity is the inheritance no one can steal. Elara pressed her palm to her chest, tears blurring her sight. The betrayal, the humiliation, they suddenly felt smaller beside the legacy she'd forgotten she carried. She sat on a bench in the hotel lobby, heart heavy but steadying. Why had she stayed with Marcus so long? Because she'd believed love was duty, that patience would fix everything. But now she understood patience without respect becomes chains. She remembered every time she'd told herself one more chance, every time she'd mopped tears from the same floor she mopped spills. She realized that her suffering wasn't weakness, it was evidence of loyalty misused. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from the law firm. Please call at your earliest convenience. The trustees are awaiting confirmation. Elara inhaled deeply, glancing at her reflection in the glass door. For the first time in years, she didn't see a tired wife. She saw the daughter of Thomas Rousseau, a woman who could rebuild from ashes. She whispered, maybe this is how it ends. Not with revenge, but revelation. Her phone rang a foreign number. She answered hesitantly. Miss Hale, a calm voice said, this is Mr. Harrison from Harrison and Adkins LLP. We've been expecting your call. When can you come to Geneva? Elara froze. Geneva. The name shimmered like destiny. She glanced once more toward the hallway leading to Suite 312, toward the ghost she was leaving behind. Then, softly, booked the flight. As she ended the call, her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Marcus. You're nothing without me. Don't ever forget that. Elara looked at the screen for a long moment, then deleted the message with one swipe. But soon, the man who said she was nothing would learn she owned everything. The private jet door sealed shut with a hiss. For the first time in her life, Elara wasn't cleaning the floors of a plane, she was sitting in one. Elara, widow in spirit though not by law, sat by the window clutching a sealed envelope embossed with the Rousseau family crest. Her face was pale from sleeplessness, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. Across from her sat Mr. Harrison, 55, immaculate in a charcoal suit, the kind of man whose calm could steady a storm. Outside, the night sky unfolded like dark velvet. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. Elara hadn't spoken since takeoff. She simply held the envelope, afraid that opening it would make everything too real. Mr. Harrison broke the silence. Mrs. Hale, she flinched. Just Elara, he nodded politely. Elara, your great-uncle Alistair Rousseau left instructions that the inheritance remains, sealed until you verify identity in person. He believed wealth means little without wisdom. Her brows furrowed. I didn't even know he existed. Mr. Harrison smiled faintly. He knew of you. Your father was the only Rousseau who chose love over empire. Alistair admired that courage. 10 years earlier, Elara sat in her mother's kitchen, the air thick with fried onions and frustration. Her mother, Martha, tossed a letter into the sink, lighting a match. We don't need their charity, she'd said as flames consumed the embossed crest. Elara had wanted to ask who they were, but fear of reopening old pain had kept her silent. Now she understood the Rousseaus hadn't vanished. They'd waited. She turned to the window, watching the clouds pass beneath them. The woman in the reflection didn't look like the one who scrubbed hotel floors. She looked like someone remembering her name. "Why me?" she whispered. Mr. Harrison's gaze softened. "Because, despite what life took from you, you never stopped giving." That was his measure of worth. Her throat tightened. "Marcus said I was worthless." "Then Marcus," he said evenly, "will learn the cost of ignorance." Ilara exhaled, releasing years of held breath. "What happens when we land?" "You'll review the trust documents," Harrison replied, "and you'll sign under your full name, Ilara Rousseau Hale." She touched the envelope, tracing the seal. "And after that? That depends on whether you want to build or burn." Ilara hesitated, then tore the envelope open. Inside was a single handwritten note from her late great-uncle. "For every debt you paid that wasn't yours, this is your freedom returned. For every hand that struck you, this is your justice restored. Do not seek revenge, child. Build something they can never buy your name." A tear slipped down her cheek. She folded the letter carefully, whispering, "I will." As the plane began its descent toward Geneva, her phone vibrated unknown number. She almost ignored it, until she saw the preview. "You think you've escaped me? Check your bank account." Marcus. Her stomach tightened. She opened her banking app. Balance, $0. The screen dimmed as the plane wheels touched down. But what Marcus had stolen in greed, destiny was about to return in magnitude. The ATM screen blinked twice before spelling her downfall. Balance, $0. Ilara's knees almost gave out right there on the polished Geneva floor. Ilara stood inside the grand marble lobby of the Adkins Global Bank, the same institution where her inheritance was supposed to arrive. Her reflection in the golden elevator doors looked ghost-like, lips trembling, hands gripping her phone. Beside her stood Mr. Harrison, calm as a storm contained in a glass. His silver tie pin glimmered under the chandelier. "Marcus did this," Ilara whispered, her voice cracking. "He drained what of gold little I had left before the flight." Harrison checked his watch. "Then he's already panicking. People like him always act out before they fall." She blinked back tears. "But how can someone still hurt you after you've left them?" He gave a faint smile. "Because they haven't realized they've already lost you." They stepped into the meeting chamber. The room was vast crystal windows overlooking Lake Geneva. At the far end, Lucienne Adkins, the formidable chairwoman, sat waiting. Her gray hair was perfectly styled, her presence commanding. "Ilara Rousseau Hale," Lucienne said, voice smooth as marble. "We've been expecting you. Please sit." Ilara sat, palms damp, still clutching the phone that showed her empty balance. Lucienne's gaze flicked to the screen. "He emptied your personal account?" Ilara nodded wordlessly. Lucienne leaned back. "Then perhaps it's poetic that you are here, today, signing documents that will make that man's theft look like pocket change." Harrison slid a folder forward. Inside lay the Rousseau trust deed, embossed with the crest her mother once burned. Ilara's hands trembled as she read her name beside words she'd never imagined seeing. Primary beneficiary. Total value, $50 billion. 6 months earlier, Ilara stood outside a pawn shop, rain soaking through her shoes. She had just sold her wedding necklace, the one Marcus gave her. He'd said it was for a temporary loan. She'd smiled, believing him. Now that memory hit her like a bruise resurfacing. Return to present. Tears welled, but not from weakness. From realization. Every humiliation had been preparing her for this moment. Lucienne's voice softened. "Mr. Rousseau left specific instructions, my dear. You're not just inheriting wealth. You're inheriting control over the Rousseau Global Trust, the foundation, and every affiliated holding. You'll need to decide how to use it." Ilara exhaled, steady, for the first time. "I'll use it to build, not destroy." Lucienne nodded approvingly. "Spoken like your father." Middle, emotional reflection. Ilara traced her name on the document. In that silent act, the woman who once begged for coins became the woman who would decide fates. Harrison leaned closer. "Once you sign, the transfer activates in 24 hours. Marcus will never be able to touch a cent again." Her lips curved faintly. "Good. Let him feel what nothing really means." She signed. The pen scratched history onto paper. Seconds later, Harrison's phone buzzed. He frowned, reading the message aloud. Emergency alert. Unauthorized attempt to access Rousseau Holdings traced to Ohio, USA. Alara's pulse quickened. Marcus. Her expression hardened, grief turning into quiet fury. Then let's make sure he learns what he just tried to steal from. Because the next move wouldn't be defense, it would be war. The call came at 2:14 a.m., Geneva time. When Alara answered, all she heard at first was laughter, his laughter. Elara Hale, newly reinstated heiress of the Rousseau legacy, stood barefoot in the middle of her hotel suite overlooking Lake Geneva. She wore a silk robe, provided by the bank, a luxury that still felt alien on her skin. But the voice on the phone dragged her straight back to the nightmare she'd escaped. Marcus Hale, her ex-husband, and the man who had drained her last savings before she learned she was worth billions. Her reflection in the glass was split, one part the woman he broke, the other the woman he no longer knew existed. Didn't think I'd find your number that fast, did you? Marcus sneered over the line. You think you can run off with my money? Alara's voice was steady. Your money? He chuckled darkly. What's yours was mine, sweetheart. Don't forget that. I made you. Without me, you're nothing. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Funny, she whispered. That's exactly what you'll be soon. 3 years earlier, Marcus sat at their kitchen table surrounded by gambling slips and empty bottles. Alara, you don't understand pressure, he'd snapped, tearing at his hair. If you love me, you'll fix it. And she had. She'd picked up another job that same night, the 5th one, while he slept. Now, standing by the window in Geneva, Alara could still see that same darkness in his voice. Only this time, she wasn't the one trembling. Marcus continued, voice dripping venom. You'll regret walking away. You'll come crawling back when no one else wants you. Alara smiled faintly, a smile he couldn't see. Marcus, I'm done crawling. You just can't see how far I've risen. She ended the call. Silence flooded the suite. Only the faint hum of city lights remained. Moments later, a knock. It was Mr. Harrison, crisp in a navy suit despite the hour. I assume you've heard from him? He asked. Alara nodded. He called to remind me who I used to be. And what did you say? She met his gaze. That I'm not her anymore. Harrison gave a rare approving smile. Good, because tomorrow the transfer completes. Once it does, we begin phase 2, ensuring your assets are invisible and his every theft is traceable. Lucienne entered, holding a thin file. Our digital forensics team located his attempt to breach the trust servers, she said. He used an American IP routed through an old bank account in both your names. He's just committed international fraud. Alara's pulse slowed, not in fear, but in realization. His downfall had already begun. She walked toward the window again. The reflection of her own face hovered over Geneva's lights, strong, poised, unrecognizable. For years she'd been running toward survival. Now she was standing still, letting justice catch up. Mr. Harrison's phone buzzed again. He glanced down and frowned. It's from our security team, he said quietly. Marcus isn't alone. He's working with someone on the inside of your old circle. Alara's heartbeat quickened. Who? Lucienne flipped the file open. A photograph slid out. Chloe Rivers, smiling, standing beside Marcus. Alara's fingers curled into fists. The betrayal had doubled. And this time, she wouldn't confront them with tears, but with power they couldn't comprehend. Alara stared at the surveillance photo, Chloe's manicured hand resting on Marcus's chest. Her best friend, her betrayer, her echo. In a glass-walled conference room high above Geneva, Alara Hale sat between Mr. Harrison and Lucienne Adkins. Her face was unreadable, not numb, not angry, simply resolved. The city lights glittered beneath them, but the table before her was covered in documents, printouts, and transfer records. Lucienne leaned forward. You've been wronged publicly and privately. What you do next determines who you become. Alara's eyes flicked up. Then I choose to become unforgettable. Mr. Harrison placed a slim tablet in front of her, displaying Marcus and Chloe's recent movements, hotel check-ins, bank attempts, digital traces. They're moving fast, he said. But not smart. Alara scanned the data. They're using accounts tied to my old business filings, the cleaning contract company I registered years ago. Harrison smiled faintly. Good memory. We can use that. We'll let them believe they've breached the real Rousseau holdings. Lucien's eyes narrowed. You want to bait them? Ilara nodded. They've built their confidence on my silence. I'll use it one last time as a weapon. 2 years earlier, Chloe had handed Ilara a cup of coffee, laughing. When Marcus finally wins that deal, we'll celebrate together, just us girls. Ilara had smiled, trusting her. You're my sister, Chloe. You'd never hurt me. Chloe's eyes had softened or pretended to. Never. Now, in the sterile glow of the conference room, that word never played like a haunting refrain. Ilara exhaled slowly. She was the first person to call after my miscarriage, she murmured, voice low. The only one who told me to let Marcus rest. Now I see what she meant. Lucienne folded her arms. Then let them rest in the ruin they've built. Ilara leaned back in her chair, eyes glistening but firm. For years I cleaned floors that weren't mine, paid debts that weren't mine. Now, I'll collect what truly belongs to me, not through rage, but through justice. Harrison nodded. Then we begin the mirror plan. He slid a thin black binder across the table. Inside were schematics of financial decoys, media trails, and encrypted accounts. Within 48 hours, Marcus and Chloe will think they've gained access to $500 million. Every dollar will be traced, every email logged. When they attempt transfer, Ilara finished the line. The law will meet them first. Lucienne smiled faintly. You've learned fast. Ilara's gaze hardened. Pain is the best teacher. Just as Harrison gathered the files, Ilara's phone buzzed again, a new email alert. Subject, to my wife, one last chance. Sender, Marcus Hale. She opened it. Inside was a single line. I know where you are, Ilara, and I'm coming. Ilara looked out the window, the moon reflected like steel in her eyes. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking straight into her trap. The elevator doors slid open, and Marcus Hale walked straight into the trap he thought he set. He didn't recognize the woman waiting for him, not until she said his name. Ilara Hale stood at the center of the boardroom of Rousseau Global, now fully hers. She wore a tailored ivory suit, hair pinned back, a quiet storm behind her eyes. Mr. Harrison stood, slightly behind, arms folded. Lucienne to her right, the silent witnesses of an empire reclaimed. Marcus, disheveled from travel, stepped in wearing yesterday's arrogance, the kind that only survives until it meets truth. His once sharp eyes darted across the polished marble floor, unsettled by how her presence filled the room. Ilara? He started, smirking faintly. You're really going to ignore me after everything we've… You mean after everything you've done? She cut in, voice low, slicing through the air like glass. He laughed, but it trembled. You don't understand, baby. Chloe, she tricked me. It was always you. Lucienne's lip curved. Typical, she murmured. Marcus turned toward her, offended. And who the hell are you? Ilara's ally, Lucienne replied calmly. Something you never were, he scoffed, stepping closer to Ilara. You can't keep all this money. Half of it was earned while we were married. The law's on my side. Ilara turned, meeting his gaze without blinking. Marcus, the law was your weapon. Now it's my shield. Flashback trigger, the courtroom promise 3 years earlier. Marcus had stood before the judge, holding her hand just long enough for the cameras to click. Everything I do, he'd said, smiling for the press, is for my wife. Later that night, he drained their joint account, returned to present. Now that same hand, the one he'd used for vows and theft, trembled at his side. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look, maybe we got lost for a while. Maybe I let the money change me. But we can start over. I know you still love me. Ilara tilted her head slightly, studying him. Love isn't the issue, she said softly. Memory is. I remember everything. He swallowed. I was scared, Ilara. I thought you'd never forgive me. Her tone was gentle, dangerously so. Forgiveness doesn't mean return. She gestured, subtly toward Harrison. A file slid across the table toward Marcus. He opened it. Bank statements, forged transfers, screenshots of his messages to Chloe. His face drained of color. What is this? Your confession, Ilara said. Signed in advance. What? Harrison's voice was steady. Every step you've taken was monitored. Every lie recorded. You walked yourself into indictment. Marcus staggered back. You set me up. Ilara met his eyes, and for a brief second, there was something like pity. No, Marcus. You set yourself up. I just stopped cleaning up your mess. He lunged forward, rage breaking through fear, but Lucienne stepped between them, unflinching. Security moved in silently. As they dragged him away, Marcus shouted, "You'll regret this, Ilara. You'll regret everything." She didn't flinch, only whispered to herself, "Regret is your inheritance, not mine." Moments after the door shut, Ilara's phone buzzed. Unknown. Number. Message. Check your Geneva account. Someone else has already moved the funds. Her chest tightened. Harrison. It wasn't Marcus. There's another player. Lucienne's eyes narrowed. And this one might actually be dangerous. Outside, the city lights flickered as if the storm had just begun. But the next face she'd confront would rewrite everything she thought she knew about betrayal. The screen flickered, and Chloe's voice filled the room. "Miss me, Ilara?" Ilara Hale stood in the dimmed control center of Rousseau Global's security suite, flanked by Harrison and Lucienne. The monitors glowed cold blue, casting long shadows across their faces. The air was heavy, sterile, electric with disbelief. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. That voice file shouldn't exist. She's locked out of every system. Lucienne folded her arms, eyes narrowing. Unless someone on the inside let her back in. Ilara stared at the audio waveform pulsing across the central screen, her pulse echoing with it. "Play the rest," she ordered. Chloe's tone oozed through the speakers, honeyed and venomous. "You always had the looks, Ilara. The sympathy. But I had the instinct. And while you rebuilt your life with lawyers and contracts, I rebuilt mine with your inheritance. Rousseau was never meant for you, it was meant for those who could fight for it." Lucienne's brow furrowed. "She's taunting you." "No," Ilara murmured. "She's warning me." 4 years earlier, Chloe had raised a glass at Ilara's engagement dinner. "To the woman who deserves everything she dreams of," she'd said, tears in her eyes. Marcus had smiled then, touching Ilara's back with feigned tenderness. Chloe's hand brushed his as she passed by. It was fleeting, but now, remembering, Ilara saw it for what it was. An omen. The room felt colder. Harrison turned toward her. "This isn't just theft. Chloe's coordinating an attack on Rousseau's infrastructure identity, banking, data streams. She's trying to erase your holdings before the legal transfer finalizes." Lucienne tapped a monitor. "See this? 2 signatures on the last Geneva withdrawal, Marcus and Chloe, but the override key belongs to someone else." Ilara froze. "Who?" Lucienne hesitated. "It came from inside Rousseau Global." The word inside hit like thunder. Harrison's fingers flew over the keyboard. He brought up a terminal log. An access ID flashed on screen. Hale-director@rousseau.com. Ilara's heart stopped. "That's my father's account." Lucienne looked sharply at her. "You said your father passed 15 years ago." "He did." Harrison's voice was grave. "Then someone resurrected him digitally, which means Chloe has access to legacy codes." Ilara's hands trembled, the first crack in her composure since this all began. "How?" Lucienne met her eyes. "Because your father's estate executor sold the archives. Chloe must have bought them." Ilara backed away from the screen, eyes misting. The image of her father, kind, distant, brilliant, flickered in her mind. He'd trusted the world she was now fighting. "I used to believe betrayal came from the heart," she said softly. "But this is betrayal, written in code." Harrison stepped closer. "Then you'll have to learn to speak its language." She nodded, wiping her tears. "Then teach me." A new message appeared on the main monitor. Encrypted, origin unknown. Ilara hesitated, then opened it. Subject: Inheritance Reversal Protocol activated. Attachment: Video feed 01. MP4. The feed loaded grainy footage from a parking garage. Chloe stood beside a black sedan, and from the passenger side, stepping into frame, was Mr. Adkins, Lucienne's husband. Lucienne's breath caught. "No, that's impossible." Ilara's gaze darkened. "Then we're not just fighting outsiders anymore." And in that moment, Ilara understood the final betrayal was still waiting to reveal its face. Lucienne staggered back, eyes wide. "That's my husband, Ilara." Inside Rousseau Global's high-security room, Ilara stood frozen before the looping video feed. Lucienne, her trusted ally and financier, trembled as her husband's face stared back from the screen, standing beside Chloe Rivers, the woman who had already stolen one life's worth of trust. Mr. Harrison remained silent, arms folded, watching both women. His expression held the uneasy calm of a man who had seen too many betrayals unfold like clockwork. Ilara replayed the clip again. Mr. Adkins handed Chloe a folder stamped confidential, inheritance structure. His voice, though muffled by static, was unmistakable. Once it's transferred, she'll have nothing left. Ilara won't even see it coming. Lucienne clutched the edge of the table. No, that can't be him. He wouldn't. Her, the voice broke. Ilara's tone was quiet, steady but laced with pain. He already did. Lucienne turned, eyes brimming. You think I knew about this? You think I don't know what to think anymore, Ilara whispered. Every person I've trusted has had a price. Harrison stepped forward. We need to move now. If Chloe's working with Mr. Adkins, your inheritance network is compromised. Geneva's just the beginning. Lucienne's breathing grew shallow. He's been distant for months. Late meetings, secret trips. I thought it was business. Ilara looked at her, voice softer. That's what I thought about Marcus. Years earlier, Ilara had stood in the pouring rain with Marcus, clutching her soaked bouquet. You'll never face anything alone, he'd said, brushing her hair from her face. Now she could still feel that same chill, the kind that comes when promises dissolve into lies. Ilara turned to Harrison. Can we trace where this was filmed? He nodded, typing rapidly. Zurich, 3 days ago. The transaction's already in motion. Lucienne, trembling, whispered. He said he was in Dubai for negotiations. Ilara exhaled, eyes burning with a mixture of grief and control. Then Zurich is where this ends. She reached for her coat. Harrison tried to stop her. Ilara, if you confront them now, her voice cut through his warning. They think I'm still the woman who begged for love. Let's show them who I became instead. Before they could move, the lights flickered. The monitors went black. Then one line of text appeared in blood-red font across every screen. Too late, Ilara. Check your accounts. Lucienne gasped. Harrison began typing frantically. Ilara stood still, eyes locked on the glowing words. Then came the final blow, a notification ping. Rousseau Global Balance, $0. Ilara whispered. They took everything. But what Chloe didn't know was that Ilara had already hidden something money could never buy. The wedding march stopped mid-note. Every head turned as the doors swung open and Ilara stepped inside, cloaked in crimson and vengeance. Ilara Hale stood at the back of the Grand Adkins Estate ballroom, her gown shimmering like fire beneath crystal chandeliers. The crowd froze, sensing danger cloaked in elegance. At the altar, Marcus stiffened. The color drained from his face. Chloe clutched his arm, whispering, Marcus, who is that? His answer came out strangled. You? Ilara's heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing through the silent hall. She carried a single leather portfolio, the same shade as her gown. Relax, she said softly, her voice steady, deliberate. I'm only here to deliver something you forgot. Marcus forced a smirk. You shouldn't be here, Ilara. This isn't your place anymore. She stopped before the altar. It is when every brick of this place was bought with my work. The guests gasped. Cameras tilted. Even the string quartet stilled. Ilara placed the portfolio gently on the altar. Invoices. Every cent of your debts. Every late-night payment, every lawyer's call, every collector's threat. Paid. By me. She opened the folder. Crisp documents gleamed under the lights, each signed by Marcus himself. You married me for stability, you used me for rescue, and you left when you thought I was spent. 2 years earlier, Ilara sat at a diner counter under flickering light, counting bills until her fingers shook. Marcus kissed her hair. We'll make it through this, he promised. You're my whole world. Now, standing before him, she saw the irony he'd traded that world for a lie. Marcus's jaw clenched. You think you can humiliate me here? I don't need to, she said. You've already done it yourself. She turned to Mr. Adkins. But perhaps you'd like to see the rest. Harrison's? Courier stepped forward, handing Mr. Adkins a sealed envelope. The old man opened it slowly, dread tightening his grip. Inside, forged loan guarantees under Adkins Capital, Marcus's signature replicated across falsified documents. The crowd gasped as Mr. Adkins's face paled. "You forged my name?" Chloe whispered, shaking. "Marcus, tell me that's not true," Marcus stammered. I just needed time." Mr. Adkins slammed the papers onto the altar. "Time? You stole from me." Ilara's voice was calm, almost compassionate. "You stole from everyone who believed in you." Marcus's mask broke. "You'll regret this, Ilara." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I already did. Once." The ballroom doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered, flashing badges. "Marcus Hale," one said. "You're under arrest for fraud and identity forgery." Gasps rippled. Cameras flashed. Chloe fainted. Ilara turned away, unflinching. Her voice, quiet but cold, echoed through the silence. "Some debts aren't paid with money," but as the cuffs clicked shut, none of them saw the figure in the balcony, the one watching Ilara with chilling interest. "Marcus Hale, did you really forge international documents under Adkins Capital?" The questions sliced through the chaos as cameras flashed like lightning. Marcus stood in the center of the ballroom, his tuxedo disheveled, wrists bound by steel cuffs. His perfect facade was gone, replaced by sweat, fear, and fury. Beside him, Chloe Rivers crumpled to her knees, mascara streaking down her face, the same red lipstick from Scene 2 now smeared across her trembling lips. At the edge of the chaos, Ilara Hale watched, calm, still, regal in crimson. Her silence was the loudest sound in the room. Security pushed Marcus toward the marble staircase as reporters swarmed. Questions flew like daggers. "Was your marriage a fraud? How long were you stealing from Rousseau? Global? Is it true your wife paid your debts?" Marcus snapped. "You all believed her little act? She's no saint. She's Mr. Adkins's thunderous voice cut through. Enough." The crowd parted as he stepped forward, his face carved in fury. "Adkins Industries withdraws all partnerships effective immediately." His tone was final like a judge's gavel. Chloe gasped. "Father, please." He didn't even look at her. "You disgrace this family." Chloe's sobs turned to hysteria. "You used me, Marcus. You promised me everything." Marcus jerked against the guards, veins pulsing. "You used everyone, me, her, your father, just to climb." The crowd's noise swelled, phones filmed. Every secret, every sin, was now permanent. 2 years earlier, Chloe and Marcus in the parking lot of Ilara's second job, their shadows pressed together under the neon light. She'd whispered, "She'll never know." Now, under the flashing bulbs of public shame, that whisper had become a curse. Chloe's red lipstick, once her symbol of confidence, bled across her face like evidence. The crowd whispered. The irony was cinematic. The shade she'd stolen from Ilara's vanity now marked her fall. Marcus screamed as he was pulled away. "You'll regret this, Ilara." Ilara met his eyes once, unflinching. "I already did." A journalist broke through the noise. "Miss Hale, one question," he shouted. "Are you confirming ownership of the Rousseau Global Trust, the $50 billion inheritance?" Ilara turned toward the flashing cameras, her crimson gown gleaming like justice. She smiled faintly. "Yes, but wealth means nothing without peace." The crowd erupted. Cameras froze on her calm face. And from the far end of the hall, a shadowed figure, Chloe's father, watched her with unreadable eyes. But peace was never meant to come easy. "Please, Ilara, I'm ruined." Marcus fell to his knees on the marble floor of Rousseau Global Headquarters, tears streaking through his stubble. Ilara Hale, now in an ivory suit, stood behind the sleek glass podium of her empire. The Rousseau crest gleamed behind her, the symbol of the legacy he tried to steal. Cameras clicked like gunfire as Marcus, once her tormentor, now looked like a man dragged through his own lies. "Mr. Harrison stood beside her, a silent pillar as reporters whispered and the world watched. Marcus's voice cracked. "Ilara, I've lost everything. My home, my name. They froze all my accounts. Please, you won. Take me back." The crowd murmured. The microphones caught every tremor in his words. Ilara's gaze softened, not out of pity, but recognition. "Marcus," she said, voice even, I didn't win. I just stopped losing. Her words hung in the air like a verdict. She turned to the document in front of her. With calm precision, she signed it. A reporter read the digital projection aloud. Transfer of $2 million to the Hale Debt Relief Foundation, a nonprofit aiding victims of predatory loans. Ilara looked at Marcus. Consider it closure, she said quietly. For every debt I once paid in your name, 7 years earlier. A dim apartment. Young Ilara sat cross-legged on the floor, counting coins into neat piles while Marcus scrolled through betting apps. Just this once, he'd said. We'll fix it together. She'd smiled, trusting. Now, as she watched the transaction finalize on the massive LED screen, she felt that old ache dissolve, replaced by peace. Marcus stumbled closer. You still love me, don't you? The question silenced the room. Ilara met his eyes, no anger, no bitterness, only truth. I love the man you could have been, she said. But he died the day you poured boiling water on the woman who fed you. Gasps rippled, cameras flashed. Marcus's face twisted in shame. Ilara, please. Before he could reach her, 2 uniformed officers stepped forward. The lead officer spoke calmly. Marcus Hale, you are under arrest for fraud, identity forgery, and aggravated assault under reopened case number 2239R. He froze. The cuffs clicked. The same sound echoed from that night years ago, but now it was justice, not fear. Ilara's expression didn't change. She simply whispered, freedom doesn't always come quietly. As Marcus was let out, his final look wasn't hate, it was realization. The woman he had tried to destroy had learned not just to fight, but to forgive without surrender. Reporters surged forward again. Miss Hale, what's next for Rousseau Global? One shouted. Ilara turned slightly toward the window, city lights gleaming below. Restoration, she said. But peace. Peace is never free. And that night, as the world called her victorious, a sealed letter on her desk waited one that could change everything again. The ribbon trembled in her hands. For a heartbeat, Ilara thought she might cry. But then the cameras flashed, and she smiled. Welcome to the Rousseau Foundation, she said, where women learn the power they were told they never had. Ilara stood on the steps of the glass-fronted building, sunlight cascading behind her like a spotlight. The foundation's gold crest shimmered above the doors. Rousseau Foundation for Women's Financial Literacy. Beside her, Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses, proud but humbled, while Martha, her mother, clutched a handkerchief and whispered, Your father would be so proud. A gentle wind stirred, carrying applause through the crowd. Ilara approached the podium. Microphones extended. The press fell silent. 2 years ago, she began softly, I was counting coins at midnight, trying to pay another person's debt. I thought love meant saving someone else's dream while mine disappeared. A murmur rippled through the guests. Ilara's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. Don't measure your worth by who walked away, but by what you built after. Behind her, an exhibit gleamed in the lobby, a single framed $50 bill, the one she had once handed Marcus to cover his gambling debt. Beneath it, a small plaque read, Not my worth. She remembered the cold apartment, the flickering bulb, Marcus shouting about overdue bills. She'd reached into her purse, offered that last crumpled note. He'd sneered, $50? That's all you're good for? Now that same note rested under glass, a relic of pain transformed into power. Tears shimmered in her mother's eyes. You didn't just rebuild, Ilara, Martha whispered. You redefined. Ilara smiled faintly. Maybe that's what survival really is. Mom redefining what they tried to destroy. Reporters surged forward with questions, but she didn't flinch. The moment belonged not to spectacle, but to silence one she had earned. Across the street, half hidden, by a lamppost Marcus watched. His suit hung loose, his face pale and unreadable. No cameras turned toward him, no microphones reached. Just his gaze, remorseful, distant, defeated. Ilara caught sight of him. For a moment, the world blurred, not with hate, not with love, but with closure. She gave him a faint nod. Forgiveness without return. Then she turned away, extending her hand to greet a line of young women holding scholarship folders, the future she had built from ashes. The crowd erupted in applause as golden confetti rained down. Silence isn't weakness, Alara said into the microphone, her voice steady as glass. It's the sound of strength learning when to speak. But even strength, she knew, had one more test waiting beyond the applause.